like a woman who is raped by the man, by a man, and in the process of being raped, she falls in love with him. Imagine that, brothers and sisters. Think about it.
Teach, brother man.
Think about it.
Teach.
My brother also talks about our romanticizing of Mama Africa. I don't romanticize Mama Africa. I'm not into romance, I'm into aftermath.
Right.
And I am indeed most romantic about Mama Africa. Most excited about Mama Africa. If you can be excited about Mecca and Hajj, then I can be excited about Mama Africa. Be the state on the face of the earth, which belongs to us.
Right.
If you accept that Africa is the womb of humanity, then you accept that Africa, by implication, is our mother.
That's right. That's right.
We came out of the womb of Africa. Africa is our mother.
That's right.
Your mother may be perfect, may be imperfect, but she is still your mother. Africa is my mother, and her state presently is most imperfect, but she is still my mother. I have been angry with my mother many times, but I dare not disrespect her. She's sitting in the gathering. The last time I disrespected my mother, I was 17 years of age. And she gave me a box from one side and a bigger one from the other side. And my brother took me out to the house. He's in the gathering as well. And took me to his workplace. I was 17. And told that mouth of yours, get in a trouble if you have respect. Are you with me, brothers and sisters?
Yes.
There was a woman, an African woman, who was in university. She was adopted, and she went to university. And brothers and sisters, one day, another woman came to her and said, your mother is in the canteen and she wants to speak to you.
Listen good.
And she got up and ran out. She was raised by white people. She got up and ran out to see her mother, and when she looked, she saw a black woman, an African woman, with her face badly distorted because her face was burned.
Listen good.
The woman looked at her mother and she said to the person that called her, oh, that's not my mother. My mother is not that ugly.
Listen good.
She went back to where she was, and the sister went with her. And whilst they were in her dormitory, her mother came, she found the dormitory, entered the dormitory, and said to her, yes, indeed, I am your mother. She said, I am not know what I look like when I had you.
Listen good.
If you want to know what I look like, look in the mirror.
Good song.
I look exactly like you. Then she said, I got this way, my child, because I tried to save you from a fire.
Listen good.
You were in a house that was burning down, and I sacrificed my beauty to save your life.
That's right.
And she said, the only thing that pains me now is that you have become so mean and so wretched in your spirit. Mama Africa may not be looking too beautiful now, brothers and sisters, but she is still our mother.
Ten Wadi, be thankful unto the Mother, Father, creative life force of the universe. Kudzai Mudzima Mukuro, give praises unto our great ancestors. Yeah, man, we're there. And I want to also say, Abibi Fahodie, Abibi Tumi, African power and African liberation for all African people. And yeah, we're here, after, yeah, an interesting watch that I had this morning. Yeah, this morning. All right. Big up to all the brothers and sisters. Big up to Brother Kwame. Everything is everything. Shifa, Lady Divine. Big up to my brother Omowale Africa. By the way, if you're not subscribed to Omowale Africa, subscribe to Omowale Africa. Yeah, he's doing some serious things in the world of YouTube at the moment, you know what I'm saying? And yeah, man, just want to big up the brother for his works, a range of different shows and content addressing in particular issues of black manhood, but more kings and queens. So do check out Omawale Africa, you know what I'm saying, and get involved, yeah, in what the brother is doing. All right, you don't know. So I just wanted to mention that because the brother is here and it's necessary to do these things, yeah. So as you can see from the title of this video, yeah, I watched this debate yesterday on Neta, yeah. Can't remember if it was the Black News 102 channel or the Neta TV channel. In fact, I can actually check this right now. Let me just do that. It was on Neta Studios, yeah. And the debate is entitled "Should Black Americans Connect Themselves to Africa?" All right. Should Black Americans connect themselves to Africa? The debate took place between Jabari, Osazi, brother Jabari, and big up yourself, brother Jabari. You know what I'm saying? Anyway, there in the world. I don't know if you're listening, but whether or not you are, big up yourself, brother Jabari. And a brother who I was not familiar with, I had never come across him until this particular debate. And he goes by the name of Taz the Goat. Yeah. And so brother Jabari was arguing the affirmative that Black Americans should connect themselves to Africa. And brother Taz was obviously arguing the opposition. And me not like kings and queens, yeah. Like I know that self-hating Negroism is a factor of African life. Yeah, it has been for the last 500 years, if not more. Yeah, we know say the self-hating Negro mentality very much exists. Yeah, and for the record, this is not an illness, a sickness that is peculiar to brothers and sisters in the United States of America, because we Africans from the Caribbean have manifested many elements of this sickness among ourselves over the centuries too. It's an endemic, it's a pandemic, yeah, among African people, yeah, for the last 5 centuries at the very least, right? And even now, yeah, because I've been in some conversations recently where there are some brothers and sisters, they call themselves Black Caribbean or British Caribbean or Caribbean British or Black British Caribbean recently, that are spouting, a lot of this same rhetoric and the idea that somehow Pan-Africanism has held us back from dealing with the issues that we're facing in Britain. Which, if you know the history of African people in Britain, you know how ridiculous that is. And the person who I was interacting with had the goal to bring our standing in the education system as an example of what he's talking about. Evidently, the brother or sister knows nothing about the extent to which Pan-African organizations and groups and individuals have developed and produced the most longest standing educational institutions in Black Britain. Yeah, namely Saturday schools and other independent educational institutions. But that is another subject for another time. Yeah. However, Black Americans choose to define is really not the issue that I'm going to go into today. All right, it's a relevant issue, and it's one that I believe my brothers and sisters in the United States of America are best placed to tackle, yeah, and to address. All right. However, it just so happens Yeah, that we exist in a moment where the anti-African rhetoric is popular among African people, black people, around the social media sphere, and it would be beautiful if we could ignore, yeah, these people and just get on with the work. And probably I wouldn't have taken part in that debate yesterday, but I get that there is a space for debates that like that to take place. And if you check it, even just by the numbers on Sarnetta, yeah, at the time of this taping, over 17,000 views are on this video, and it's not even 24 hours old. Yeah, and I did a check earlier, and it's the most viewed video on Sarnetta already for the last couple weeks. Yeah, and so evidently there's an audience out there for a topic like this. The issue of identity is still very critical. All right, and so we have what I refer to as the anything but African movement, the anything but African evangelical alliance, that seem to find pleasure and notoriety and prestige in every identity other than African. Yeah. And the thing that unites these people, yeah, be they certain groups of the Black Hebrew Israelites, and not all of them, but many of them, and many of the most prominent ones in this dispensation of time, especially in this social media space, whether it's the Black Hebrew Israelites, whether it's some sections of the Moors, again, not all, whether it's the ADOS FBA, whether it's the we are the Aboriginal peoples of the Americas, and again, that one is not, most of these groups are not exclusive to the United States of America. Yeah, we've got Black Hebrew Israelites in UK right now and in the Caribbean. We've got the Aboriginals in the Caribbean as well. Yeah, Black people from Jamaica. Yeah, we want to come tell we say we are not African. Yeah, we is indigenous Taino and Arawak and Carib and all of these things, and have a very disparaging perspective on Africa, what it means to be African, yeah, and the present day peoples on the continent. And that is seems to be the factor that unites all of these groups. All right. So, however, Africans in different parts of the diaspora is, I self-identify as one thing, yeah, and it's a relevant issue. But it's interesting to me that when it comes to defining ourselves to anything other than African, what seems to unite all of these groups of people, yeah, is a very degraded, denigrating, and demonized view of Africa, Africanness, and present day Africans on the continent, and by extension, Africans in the diaspora who embrace their Africanness. Yeah, it seems to me to be evident that Black Hebrews who believe that they're Black Hebrews don't seem to be in big debates with Black people who believe that they're Aboriginal, or Black people who believe that they're Moors, yeah, or Black people who are ADOS and FBA, yeah, or Black people who believe that they're Carib and Taino. These groups don't seem to be in debate with each other, but they all seem to unite around an anti-African image, an anti-African conception, and an anti-African projection. And so, because of that, watching this debate yesterday was a painful experience. Yeah, it was a painful experience. And this is, I'm just doing a brief reaction. I'm gonna play a couple snippets from the debate. Yeah, I'm gonna play a couple snippets from the debate just to emphasize a point. And I'm going to emphasize this point because I believe the point that I'm going to emphasize unites the various different groups that I'm referring to. All right. They all seem to do this same thing. Yeah. So we're going on some things. And then after that, because we don't just want to critique what was said in the debate yesterday, I want to draw on the good work, yeah, of one of our great scholars by the name of Baba Sheikh Anta Diop in this book, yeah, Civilization or Barbarism. All right. Full title: Civilization or Barbarism and Authentic Anthropology. Yeah. And we're going to look at the relevance, why this issue of identity and culture is important. Yeah. And we're going to draw on the wisdom of Baba Sheikh Anta Diop in order to be able to elucidate that for us. All right. So what I'm going to do now is just share the a snippet from the debate, yeah. And I'm gonna say two snippets where Brother Taz is talking and demonstrate the contradiction of this anything but African, anti-African propaganda. All right. Now, you don't have to be an African. You don't have to want to identify as African. I'm concerned with why, when it comes to the fact that black people seem to want to discard Africanness, they do so whilst becoming preoccupied with this anti-African agenda. Yeah. If you're an American, just be an American. Why do you have so much to say about Africa and African people? If you are a Carib or a Taino, why is it that so much of your Carib or Taino identity is based around disparaging African people and painting a degraded, demonized image, yeah, of African people? Why is that such the focus for all of these people? Yeah. So we're going at some things. Yeah. And I think Brother Jabari dealt with the thing expertly yesterday. So we're not gonna re-legislate the whole debate. We just want to emphasize our point. Yeah. And this point actually relates to much of the discussions that I've been having recently around Kimoyo African spirituality. All right. And I'm gonna explain why that is. This is one of the reasons why I'm homing in on this point. Yeah. I'm gonna explain why that is in a second. But for now, we're gonna hear from the brother himself, Brother Taz. Again, I wasn't aware of this brother up until yesterday, but it was painful to listen to this brother. As it is whenever you come across Africans who are so self-hating, yeah, have been indoctrinated into such deep levels of self-hating Negroism, that they spout these. It's a very painful thing, but we've been dealing with this reality for centuries as African people, and it's one of them things that we just have to accept as a part of our journey. That many of us are sick, yeah, and are infused with that deep self-hatred that was indoctrinated into us by Europeans during enslavement and colonization. But in terms of bringing the healing, we have to analyze and dissect what the brother has said. And so we're going to do that right about now. And so tune in, family, tune in. All right, please.
Now, instead of pretending like, oh, I love Africa so much, some of us are willing to tell you about the open rejection of running to Africa. Some people were here and decided to fight on these terms. Why? Because Africa isn't just Africa. It's not just one continent. These things that these people sell you and make it sound like Africa is just one big happy continent is false. There's no such thing as an African culture because the entire continent is full of different culture. There is no such thing as an African language because the language is different everywhere. These people have invaded each other's homelands. These people don't all get along themselves. But only when you look at America, you start to talking about black people that must be unified. But when you look at that continent and see no unity, you don't think that they're not unified. And that's where the problem comes in. Because again, as a black American, you're more unified with your people in America than they are on that continent. We know that because we can see it. And so if you have an 80% black continent that is being controlled by white supremacy, why would black Americans want to connect themselves to that? Especially when the black American right now is actually being mistaught and not dealing with what's happening with their children. See, the black American is sending his children to schools that teach them that slaves were immigrants, that slaves were.
All right, family. So you heard that, right? We're emphasizing this idea that there is no African culture. Yeah, there is no African culture. Why? Because 54 countries exist on the African continent. Because there's different languages on the African continent, and all of these things. Yeah, we want just delve in at that point there, little more. All right, and in order to do so, let me make sure I got my timestamp correct. Yeah, I'm gonna go to a little bit later. Yeah, in the debate where the brother is also analyzing this concept called African culture, yeah, that he says does not exist. There is no African culture. You heard that with your own ears, all right? And this clip is going to be a little bit longer. We're going to have to, get through an ad in this part, it looks like, as well. But stay tuned, yeah? I'm going to play an extensive amount of this particular clip, yeah? And the reason will become clear when I'm done. All right, but we're gonna hear the brother for an extensive period of time run down certain information.
Somebody's actually investing in it and not giving you a whole bunch of rhetoric. See,
I think when I was about early 20s, and someone made a remark about my hairline receding, and it was like shock horror to me.
Anybody can go over there and walk around and say, "Look, I was here," but you're not investing in Africa. That's why they over there messing with them women. That's why they over there taking whatever they want to, taking those resources and turning those resources into Chinese resources. Not Black Americans. Black Americans need to focus on what we're doing, because you got a whole continent over there that they're not protecting. They're literally giving their continent away to another group of men. And if they aren't going to fight to keep their resources, why exactly should the Black American be on board fighting for them? It makes no sense. You have your own fight to deal with here in America, while their resources over there, they're not even controlling. They're not controlling them. They're not in control of them. And people that are there on that continent are starting to evolve into accepting other groups of people being there. I mean, we can make it seem like Africa this, Africa that, Africa, 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 but in reality, the United States is over there. Great Britain is over there. China's over there. Everybody's there except you, the Black man who keeps talking that Africa stuff. Africa, 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 yet you're not there.
All right, so this is the only time I'm going to pause this particular clip. Yeah? This is the only time I'm going to pause this particular clip. But I want to highlight something here. Look what this thing says. Military rule is contagious in Africa. Yeah? And this is a New York Times article. And he juxtaposes this with the website for Africa, the U.S. Military High Command. All right? And the argument is that Africa could not even protect itself. Yeah, this is the idea. All right. From who? The U.S. Military High Command. Okay. So the contradiction is this. You are a Black American. You're not an African. All right. So why are you more concerned with the fact that Africa couldn't protect itself than what America is doing in Africa? Why is there no analysis of that? What is the U.S. Military High Command doing in Africa? And what do you, as an American, yes, not an African, an American, have to say about it? Why is there no critique, yeah, analysis, or even recognition of U.S. imperialism and the criminal activities of this military and its CIA, yeah, in the world? Why is that? I'm not asking you to analyze this from an African perspective, yeah, but you are an American, and maybe that is the reason why, because it seems to me that anti-Africanness produces an allegiance, yeah, to Western imperialism. The brother or sister that I was talking about earlier, yeah, in relation to this idea of Black Caribbean British or Black British Caribbeans, yeah, seem to want to discard African identity for the sake of embracing British identity. That we need to do away with the term African Caribbean and embrace the term Black British Caribbean. What is it about anti-Africanness, yeah, that produces in our people an allegiance to white people, yeah, Western nation states and European identities? And in doing so, we begin to defend and excuse and wish away or ignore the criminal activities of these nation states in the world. I'm just pointing that out, yeah, and we're going to leave that there and continue with the rest of this diatribe. I want you to please listen carefully. I'm going to explain why I'm playing this in the end. Now, remember the previous clip I played, the brother said that there is no such thing as African culture. Yeah, because Africa is 54 countries. Yeah, it's got how much different languages and how much different cultures. So there's no such thing as African culture. Bear that in mind when you listen to the rest of this particular clip.
They're putting in the work that everybody else is putting in. The white man controls Africa now. The Asian man controls Africa. Your heart is in it, but your dime ain't in it. And that is the problem. That's why they're moving forward without you. See, y'all trying to move race first and convince people here that you're controlling Africa when they get ready to go meet with somebody, they bumping elbows with an Asian man. They're signing deals with a white man. The black man goes over there as a tourist and then comes back and tries to convince you that it's your homeland. No, you're a tourist. That's why you don't live there. And instead of trying to understand where Tad's coming from, you simply try to throw a narrative on them. Why don't you throw a narrative on those weak Africans who can't protect their women, though? I see you don't want to get deep into the culture of Africa and why a black man like myself would never want to connect to a continent full of men that terrorize their own women. Black men who terrorize women and children and don't nobody talk about it. Because when he says we don't want to connect to Africa, well, there's a reason why. Not all of us are co-signing rape. See, they still got to go out in the streets and march and complain to other black men about rape because these weak African men won't stand up for these women. These weak African men won't stand up for these babies. Whether we're talking about Liberia, South Africa, we can go all across the country. You don't find black men standing up for their women and children, which is why Asians can come over there and take over your continent and start building on it and have you running and telling other black Americans that there's something wrong with you. No, there's nothing wrong with me. There's something wrong with black people in America who ignore what's going on that continent. Different groups of black men raping black women. And so if you love Africa so much, how dare you ignore what's going on to those people? It's interesting because I know how it works, right? What you tell me is that, well, child marriage is rape and all of those things happen in America. Yeah, but America ain't 80% black. Your continent is. Your continent is so-called full of black people. You want me to love the continent so much because it's full of black people.
5 minutes, 5 minutes, 5 minutes.
Those black people on that continent are protecting the women and children of those continents, of those countries. And so if we can look to a continent where children are being married off and the women are not protected from other groups of men going into that continent, how exactly do you think a black American like myself is supposed to speak to protecting groups of women on a continent where the weak men on that continent don't want to protect them? These weak Africans do not want to protect their own children because they're so busy trying to marry them. They're so busy trying to have sex with these babies that they don't think protection. See, it's sad that the black American thinks that he can just take you and throw you right next to some Africans who won't even stand up for their women and children. I don't want that. I don't want that for black Americans. But if that's what you want for your
Mac Containers have developed a container home and they can be transported and
yourself, it's perfectly fine. You can do it. What I'm telling you is I went and got facts to speak to that African culture you keep hiding from, to speak to that African understanding y'all want to keep on selling. I bring facts, not feelings, not I feel like my grandma, I feel like my grandpa. No, I feel like you should care more about these children over there on the continent where you can go and dig up the information yourself. You know, Somalia, where over 90% of girls and women have been subjected to female genital mutilation. I'm pretty sure Jabari ain't got much on that. I'm pretty sure these African wannabes, you know, these E-Africans, these 23andMe Africans, they ain't got much to say about female genital mutilation and what's going on over there on that continent, what they're doing to these babies and these girls. See, they got to get the whole world behind it to try to stop these weird Africans from doing this to these girls. Ask yourself why. Ask yourself why these Africans are so hell-bent on genetic mutilation, why they don't mind hurting girls and women. Why is it that we can find all over the continent this culture? This is not just some random event going on in one place. This is an African culture to rape, child marriage, genetic mutilation. Yeah, that's what this African paradigm leaves us with. An estimated 55 million girls under the age of 15 in 28 African countries have experienced female genetic mutilation. This is why you can run from whatever you want to feelings.
2 minutes, 2 minutes.
Facts aren't going anywhere. These facts are going to have to stand, and it's going to hurt you to have to try to explain how Black Americans should be connecting to this. Why would we? Why would we want to? Again, ask yourself, when you have women living on the continent at risk of being raped, of being mutilated, of being married off as children, what exactly does the Black American have that he can do here on behalf of those young girls? There's nothing I can do. And I'm not here to sell you a dream. I'm just telling you that the rest of the world knows it. The rest of the world is fully aware of the female genetic mutilation taking place in Kenya and many other places on the continent, that these broken bucks, you know, buck breaking, these broken bucks won't speak again. It takes somebody like me to tell you.
All right. So y'all heard that, yeah? So 2 different clips. In the first, there is no African culture, 54 countries, how much different language, etc., etc. By the time we get to the second clip, there is African culture. And African culture is rape. African culture is female genetic mutilation. He means female genital mutilation. African culture is marrying girls to big men. Yeah. And what was the other one? There was female genital mutilation, there was rape, and there was one other that is slipping my mind at the moment. Yeah. The contradiction here should be obvious. All right. And it should be obvious that also that nowhere in the Black world are our women sufficiently protected. Are people in general sufficiently protected? Nowhere in the world are our nations free from the intrusion and the invasion of Western nations and communities. I should say nowhere, no nation or community. Yeah. So no community in a majority white nation in America or the UK or France or anywhere in the world are Black people experiencing high levels of protection among ourselves. Yeah. Nowhere in the world. That should be obvious. All right. It should also be obvious that even if everything that the brother said is true, yeah, and we're not going to even try to, because one of the things that happens in debates such as these, yeah, and it's a difficult one to address, is that people just throw things at the wall. All right, they don't have to contextualize, they don't have to be honest, they don't have to, you know, to deal with history and culture and sociology, economics, and all of the factors that go into the realities that we face in many of our different nations. They don't have to go into that. Yeah, they can just throw things out without even proper sourcing. Yeah, and require you to have to run around dealing with all of these random different points. Yeah, that they've thrown out there for the masses to consume. Yeah, and if you're intelligent, you don't try to do that, because that's not the point. Yeah, the point is to throw all these things out and to paint a particular kind of picture, and knowing that most people listening are not going to do any further research. Yeah, and don't really care to, because the disparaging image of Africa and African people is enough. All right, but my interest in those particular clips is how we've gone, yeah, from no African culture whatsoever. It's impossible. You can't have no African culture except in the context of rape, yeah, molestation, female genital mutilation. How does that become the only African culture that we can recognize as African culture? This should be unequivocal evidence of the fact that when we're dealing with mentalities such as these, the self-hating Negro mentality, yeah, that these people are quite happy with the idea of African culture as long as it doesn't represent anything positive. I know, because I've been in these conversations. And whenever you say African spirituality, African culture, somebody says, well, what are you talking about? There's no such thing as African culture. And then they give you, yeah, an image of a man with a plate in his lip, and ask you, if you love African culture so much, why you don't follow that? You just got told me that there's no such thing as African culture. They're all so different. So why is my embrace of African culture being defined by now this man with a plate in his lip? Does that even make sense? And that's not to disparage the brother with a plate in his lip. I'm just asking a question. Yeah. So in order to analyze this a little piece further, what I want to do is explore the work of Baba Sheikh Anta Diop. And before I do that, for those who weren't here, yeah, let me play this clip again. All right. I open with a clip of my father speaking, and I'm on a clip called "Stop Romanticizing Africa." I'm going to play it again because it relates to what the brother has said. Because the reality is, even if every word that he said was true and fully contextualized, why does that mean that we're not African? All of those things can be true. And the fact that we're still African can be true. Ask yourself that. If all these degrading images, and why does that mean that we're not African? We, the descendants of people who come from the Yoruba, known as the Yoruba, yeah, known, and though most of them weren't known as the Yoruba before we left, but known as the Igbo, the Ewe. We who are the descendants of these people, yes, various different groups of people that represent our ancestors in the Americas, the Kikongo. Yeah, we who are the Fon, we who are the Mande, yeah, we who are the Ga, the Ogoni, the Songe, various different groups of people that make up our ancestral lines. Yeah, these are these people. So how is it that even if all about the things that the brother has said is true, that now because those things are true, we no longer descend from those people, therefore we're no longer African? How does that even make logical sense? Yeah, it doesn't. It doesn't. And the reality is, we know that our people everywhere in the world, including the continent of Africa, have challenges. It doesn't make any difference to the fact that Africa is our mother.
My brother also talks about our romanticizing of Mama Africa. I don't romanticize Mama Africa. I'm not into romance, I'm into Afriman. And I am indeed most Afrimantic about Mama Africa. Most excited about Mama Africa, if you can be excited about Mecca and Hajj, then I can be excited about Mama. The largest and most powerful real estate on the face of the earth, which belongs to us.
Right.
If you accept that Africa is the womb of humanity, then you accept that Africa, by implication, is our mother.
That's right. That's right.
We came out of the womb of Africa.
That's so.
Africa is our mother.
That's right.
Your mother may be perfect, may be imperfect, but she is still your mother.
That's so.
Africa is my mother, and her state presently is most imperfect, but she is still my mother. There was a woman, an African woman, who was in university. She was adopted, and she went to university. And brothers and sisters, one day, another woman came to her and said, your mother is in the canteen and she wants to speak to you.
Listen good.
And she got up and ran out. She was raised by white people. She got up and ran out to see her mother, and when she looked, she saw a black woman, an African woman, with her face badly distorted because her face was burnt.
Listen good.
The woman looked at her mother and she said to the person that called her, oh, that's not my mother. My mother is not that ugly.
Listen good.
She went back to where she was, and the sister went with her. And whilst they were in her dormitory, her mother came, she found the dormitory, entered the dormitory, and said to her, yes, indeed, I am your mother. She said, I am not now what I looked like when I had you.
Listen good.
If you want to know what I look like, look in the mirror.
Good song.
I look exactly like you. Then she said, I got this way, my child, because I tried to save you from a fire.
Listen good.
You were in a house that was burning down, and I sacrificed my beauty to save your life.
That's right.
And she said, the only thing that pains me now is that you have become so mean
Word song.
and so wretched in your spirit. Mama Africa may not be looking too beautiful now, brothers and sisters, but she is still our mother.
All right, so we get the point, kings and queens. Yeah, Mama Africa may not be looking too beautiful, and that's the correct. Mama Africa will only look beautiful when African people begin to look beautiful, and African people nowhere in the world are looking as beautiful as we should be right about now. Yeah, so we can single out the continent if we want, but Africans in the UK, Africans in America, Africans in Jamaica, Trinidad, Brazil, Colombia, India, France, Belgium, Portugal, anywhere in the world are not looking as beautiful as we should be right about now. But we're not here just to get at Brother Taz. Yeah, I wanted to highlight that aspect of the conversation to give emphasis to why brothers and sisters like myself focus on explaining elements of African culture, particularly through philosophy and spirituality. Yeah, because a part of the liberation process has to be the restoration and the rescuing of our culture from the hyper denigration that it has experienced, and also our capacity to make our culture, our philosophies functional in the arenas of politics, economics, and social order in general. And so I'm going to go into the works of Sheikh Anta Diop, because this is about our culture and identity. Yeah, as I said earlier. Before I do that, I'm going to touch on an excerpt from this book. Yeah, that explains one or two things. Yeah, and it's edited by Mama Ama Mazama, Mambo Ama Mazama, who is one of the key definers, yeah, and promoters of the paradigm known as Afrocentricity, yeah. And the book is entitled The Afrocentric Paradigm. I do encourage ones and ones to get it, yeah. Whatever your perspective, if you're sincere in learning and knowing about the African-centered or Afrocentric perspective, then do get this text, all right? It will explain one or two things for you, yeah. Mambo Ama also, I spoke to a few years ago. She's also a Mambo, which is a Vudan priestess. Yeah. And in some of the conversations that I've been having recently, it has been said that Vudan is not a spiritual system, it's a practice. That is false. And so if you want more information on that, you can get more from Mambo Ama Mazama. Just check the videos on my channel and you see me having conversed and interviewed her. No doubt we'll do that again. All right. But Mamba Amma wrote the introduction to this book, yeah, and I'm gonna read a paragraph from it that explains and to introduce what we're gonna go into from Baba Sheikh Anta Diop in a little while, yeah. And she says the ontological reduction of colonized people. Ontology is about the self, yeah, how we define and understand the self, all right, who we are, when as individuals and as a people collectively. The ontological reduction of colonized people that is a necessary part of colonialism has been well understood and described, thanks in particular to Albert Memmi, 1991, and Frantz Fanon, 1952 and 1968. These two authors expose quite brilliantly the dialectical relationship that colonialism creates, listen carefully, between a hyper-valorized colonial structure. A hyper-valorized colonial structure, British. A hyper-valorized colonial structure, French. A hyper-valorized colonial structure, American. A hyper-valorized colonial structure, Spanish, etc., etc. A hyper-valorized colonial culture and a systematically denigrated colonized culture. A systematically denigrated colonized culture, African. Animality and plurality are two major metaphors around which the reductive discourse on the colonized is organized. We get reduced to primitiveness and animal instincts. We become animals. This is why African indigenous spiritual systems are referred to with terms like animalism, as we've explored previously. Yeah? Animalism, animism, and all of these things. Animality and plurality are the two major metaphors around which the reductive discourse on the colonized is organized. Conversely, the colonizer, who is supposed to have reached a higher level in the evolutionary ladder, is made to symbolize the perfection that maturity and wisdom bring. So we discard all this African business. We're now Caribbean British, because that gets us farther away from this African thing. We're now just American. Yeah? We're French. We want to follow Westminster democracy and capitalism and socialism. Hey, conversely, the colonizer, who is supposed to have reached a higher level in the evolutionary ladder, is made to symbolize the perfection that maturity and wisdom bring. The conclusion is self-evident. Only through a careful imitation of Europeans can the colonized people hope to improve their lot. Can't be African and improve our lot. Yeah? We have to become British. Black British. British black, more specifically, because the British come first. Become American. Yeah, you can't deal with this African. If we want to improve our lot, you can't talk as African foolishness. What you deal with? Yeah? Only through a careful imitation of Europeans can colonized people hope to improve their lot and move out of the animality and childhood into full humanity and adulthood. This imitation process corresponds to what Mudimbe 1988 has referred to as the conversion process. We convert ourselves out of our history, out of our experience, out of our traditions, out of our culture, and imitate, convert into imitations of the cultures and the identities of our oppressors, our colonizers. Make no mistake about it, family. British is a colonial identity as far as Africans are concerned. American is a colonial identity as far as Africans are concerned. Oh, but Shakira, the Africans sold us into slavery. This ridiculous argument, even if it's 100% true, is a contradiction. If you can reject African identity on the basis of the fact that Africans sold us into slavery, then you can also reject American identity, British identity, French identity, based upon the fact that these are the nations in whose name we were enslaved, raped, tortured, castrated, mutilated, colonized, stolen from, robbed, pillaged, etc., etc., etc. Yeah? So if you're going to discard one, discard the other. All right? If you're going to be intellectually consistent with your foolishness. But now we're going to get into Baba Sheikh and Diop, yeah? And in the book, as I said, this is the reason why ones like myself actually delve into the philosophy of African spirituality, because all of these, the hypervalorization of Western culture and the hyperdenigration of African culture is a reality that we're still living with, as evidenced by many of the statements that the brother Taz made, and many of the statements that brothers and sisters make every day in our personal lives and on the internet and so on and so forth. Again, this anti-Africanness, this anything but Africanness, the self-hating Negroism is not unique to brothers and sisters in the United States of America. Everywhere African people are, there are Africans who perpetuate that self-hating Negroism. All right. And so it's necessary for us to talk about concepts like Ma'at and Kimoyo and Ankh and Ashe and Dingo Dingo, Yekala Mudingo Dingo. It's necessary for us to talk about Ukobo and Itongo, and Keper. It's necessary for us to talk about Nut and Geb and Nun as primordial waters. It's necessary for us to explain these things, to give expression to the African intellectual tradition that has not been celebrated, by us in the way that it should be, to combat the denigrated image that we have been indoctrinated into and perpetuate as a people. And we have to accept that in doing so, there are many of our people who are so emotionally attached to the hyper denigrated image. There are so many people that whose lives are based around the hyper denigrated image of African culture and African people, that they can't stand to hear Africa and Africanness spoken about in any kind of positive way. This is how sick we are as a people. We can't stand for hear Kemet spoken about in a certain way, because we come from religious traditions in which God himself cast judgment on Kemet. We can't be Lord in Kemet, because the Bible and the Quran tell us that we can't deal with them something there. So we have to maintain a denigrated image of Kemet, let alone the rest of Africa, where all these savages and barbarians come from. So we're going to go into this, and we're going to explore this idea of culture and identity. And Baba Sheikh Anthony helps us to properly contextualize this thing. Yeah. Right. So it looks like everybody can see my screen. We give thanks. So I'm gonna read. Yeah. I'm not gonna extemporize too much, but just gonna read, and I'm gonna share extensively from the text. Yeah, because I want people to appreciate that when the African centered or the Afrocentric, yeah, and the African spiritualist comes, yeah, there is a significant scholarship tradition behind him and her. That brothers and sisters who are hostile to the tradition do not want to engage whilst they are critiquing the tradition. And they do so for good reason, because you have to have intelligent conversation when you are engaging in intelligent argument. And these people are not interested in engaging in intelligent conversation and intelligent argument. Even if they're going to disagree, they should disagree intelligently. And so Baba Sheikh Anthony says, for every individual, his or her own cultural identity is a function of that of his or her people. There are no individual identities around here, family. Yeah. All right. Cultural identity is a function of that of his or her people. Consequently, one must define the cultural identity of a people. This means, to a great extent, one must analyze the components of the collective personality. We know that three factors contribute to its formation. And Baba Sheikh Anthony identifies three factors. One, a historical factor. Two, a linguistic factor. And three, a psychological factor. We're going to touch on 1 and 3. We're going to touch on the historical factor and the psychological factor today. All right. The historical factor is the cultural cement. That's the foundational factor that unifies the disparate elements of a people, that makes them into a whole by the particular slant of the feeling of what? Historical continuity, live by the totality of the collective. Yeah. So if you want to divide a people, yeah, you have to disturb their historic. If you want to subjugate a people, you have to disturb their historical continuity, which is implicitly tied to their identity, because people define themselves according to culture, yes, and landmass, related to landmass, because land is the basis of independence. If you don't have independence, you don't have any. Sorry, if you don't have any land, you don't have any independence. All right. It is the historical conscience thus engendered that allows a people to distinguish itself from a population whose elements by definition are foreign. If we lose our historical conscience, we can't identify ourselves from foreigners. It becomes more acute when those foreigners are our invaders, colonizers, enslavers, and oppressors. Yeah. The loss of historical conscience means that we're incapable. We are rendered incapable, yes, from distinguishing ourselves from populations whose elements by definition are foreign. With historical conscience, you can be anywhere in the world and understand who you is separate from who everybody else is. I just say it go. One from the other. The population of a large city market is composed of foreign tourists who come from the 5 continents and who do not have any cultural bond with each other. We know this. When I grew up in London, we know when we go a certain place, we know when we're there at Chinatown, because everything just look Chinese. Yeah, and enough I will love the Chinaman food. We know that the Chinaman food is Chinaman food. Yeah, we know when we there go a certain market, we know say the Indian them bout, cause them run everything around there. Yeah, and we buy free yama banana from them, but we know say for them culture, not for culture. We know them something there. We live in the same place, we live in the same area. Yeah, we go school together and all these things. We know say the culture them different. I just say it go. The historical conscience, through the feeling of cohesion that it creates, constitutes the safest and the most solid shield of cultural security for a people. Let me read that again. The historical conscience, through the feeling of cohesion that it creates, constitutes the safest and the most solid shield of cultural security for a people. I never deliver, without quoting Mama Marimba Ani. The time has come, kings and queens. Yeah, Mama Marimba Ani says our culture is our cure. Culture is your immune system. Yeah, it's how you it is the fundamental factor that we use in the protection of ourselves and our people, our nationhood, our economic structures, our institution, and so on and so forth. All right. This is why every people seeks only to know and to live their true history, well, to transmit its memory to their descendants. All right. And that relates to why when Africans adopt the identities of the colonizer, the oppressor, that's the reason why we fail to challenge their institutions, like their military, in relation to other Africans around the world. Because for history become Fiwi history. So we're no longer identifying with Osei Tutu and Akomfo Noche, yeah, and Mondongo and Machunde, or Kikuyu and Mumbi, Shaka Zulu, yeah, and Mbuya Nehanda, Dedan Kimati, yeah, Malcolm X, Marcus Garvey. We're no longer, we start identifying with Winston Churchill, yeah, because we want to protect Britain. And Winston Churchill was a champion of the British nation. We start defend and project George Washington, slave owner boy. Yeah, because our identity, our culture dictates that our interest now become the interest of the colonizer. Let's move forward. The essential thing for people is to rediscover the thread that connects them to their most remote ancestral past. In the face of cultural aggression of all sorts, in the face of all disintegrating factors of the outside world, the most efficient cultural weapon with which a people can arm itself is this feeling of historical continuity. That word comes up again repeatedly. Historical continuity. Knowing your history from way back there, so come right down to yaso. Yeah, the erasing, the destruction of the historical conscience also has been, since time began, part of the techniques of colonization, enslavement, and debasement of peoples. The passage below by M. Peyronet, yeah, cited by George Hardy, is proof of this. Yeah, and Peyronet is a French colonizer boy. All right. He says there is a subject I would see disappearing without regret from the program of our African schools, declares M. Peyronet, senator from Allier, in a recent article in Annales Coloniales. Yeah, it is history. A few readings during the French course would be enough to give them the notion of our country's power. So the boy, look a French colonizer boy, yeah. Say we don't really need to teach the history business, the African school then we have, the missionary school then we have. We don't really need to deal with the history business, yeah. Just give them the general notion of the power of the French, not the African, yeah, but the French. And so we see that a disconnect from our history in this instance being Africa and African people and African cultures, is an essential component for subjugating a people, and was an essential component in the colonization process. So this particular French boy want the African people them to define as French, not African. We see what I go on. Yeah? And this is literal. The French colonizers saw their colonies as extensions of France, to the point whereby even when the people them are fight back and mash up the colonial system, yeah, the activity of the French was designed to perpetuate colonialism through what they call the Independence Pact. That is why, yeah, that promised African nations French citizenry, that they become French if they do things like deposit 50 to 80% of their foreign reserves in the French central bank. if they do things like give France first pick over natural resources found in the nation. Yeah, activities, social power relationships, which perpetuate themselves to this day because so many of us were indoctrinated into an anti-African French colonial mentality, self-hating Negroism. Well, we could replace the word French here with British. Replace the word French here with Spanish, Belgian, Portuguese, and we can replace the word French, yes, sir, with American. It is these possibilities of cultural aggression linked to the vital, and I told you I'm sharing extensively now. I want you to know where the brethren are dealing with, where the ancestors are dealing with. Yeah? Shake hand to the up. Hopefully, one or two of you will be encouraged to pick up the book and read it proper and go in at the thing proper. Yeah? It is these possibilities of cultural aggression linked to the vital importance on this subject matter that have led the developing nations coming out of the colonial night to make the teaching of history a national activity. So as much as the colonizer used history and our disconnection from history as a part of the colonial agenda, yes, the revolutionary agenda centralizes the history of the people in the forwarding of the revolution. All right. In any case, the teaching of this material must particularly hold the attention of the state. One sees that what is important for a given people, listen to this part very carefully. Listen to this part very carefully. One sees that what is important for a given people is not the fact of being able to claim a more or less grandiose historical past, but rather to be simply pervaded by the sense of continuity. I wonder if you hear what I just said a while ago. Me wonder if you just hear what I said a while ago. Me say, one sees that what is important for a given people is not the fact of being able to claim a more or less grandiose historical past, but rather to be simply pervaded by this sense of continuity so characteristic of the historical conscience. What this is saying, family, is that historical continuity doesn't require your people to have achieved great things. The functionality of historical continuity doesn't require your people to have built pyramids, yeah, and built universities in West Africa and developed the first writing systems, yeah, and pioneered architecture and mathematics and science. It doesn't require your people to have developed the deepest concepts of philosophy and spirituality. It doesn't require for your people to have developed the first tools, yeah, to develop the first agricultural systems and the first state formations and the first it don't require all them thing there. All that is required is for you to have a connection, yes, a continuity between your ancestors and yourself. From there, so you can do anything you want to do. You can develop anything you want to develop because you have what? Historical conscience. So all of this stuff, all this hyper denigration of Africa is irrelevant. It is designed to sever us from a history that is in fact glorious. Yeah, but even if it was true, knowing that history would be important. Even if we came from barbarians and savages, knowing this and the history and development of those barbarians and savages would be important for us to develop ourselves as a cultural entity in the now. That's what's being said here. It could never occur to the working class people of Albania, yeah, working class people of Albania, to envy the brilliant historical past of the British. The knowledge of their own history, no matter what it is what is important. And that we wonder why we can't come out of the position where we're in, you know, because we don't want to deal with the history. We want to separate ourselves from it in the imitation of colonizers. We said earlier that the people with a people, listen to this, A people without an historical conscience is a population. Yeah, listen to this. A people who could be a community, a people who could be a nation without an historical conscience is a population. Quote unquote tribe, this derogatory terminology that was imposed on us during colonization, that we use and perpetuate, yeah, our denigration through the use of this terminology. We become populations within Britain, ethnic minority, black minority ethnic, populations in America, populations in France, Belgium, Portugal, Spain, Jamaica, Trinidad, Cuba, Brazil. We have said a people without a historical conscience is a population. They lose the institutions that make them a cultural entity, a nation entity. Jews, wherever they are on the planet, are a nation. And they'll make you know, so them is a nation. Not just a population in Britain, no. Israel our thing. And that when they're upon. And we name Jew. Our. Yeah. The loss of national sovereignty and of historical conscience following a prolonged foreign occupation engenders what? Stagnation. Yeah. So whereas the brother or sister that was trying to impress upon me this need for Black Caribbean British or British Black Caribbean identity, yeah, suggesting that our connection to Africa is what is keeping us stagnant. No, the loss of national sovereignty, your own sovereignty, and of historical conscience following a prolonged foreign occupation, colonization by the British, yeah, engenders stagnation or even sometimes regression, disintegration, and a partial return to barbarism. This was the case with upper. I'm going to skip that part there. Yeah, I'm not going to read the rest of that paragraph, right? For the sake of time, I'm going to move on. All right. A great enigma of history seen in a new light, namely, how did it happen that a people who built great civilizations fell so low afterwards, and particularly the African people? It is clear that the exhausted. No, we're going to leave that there. But that is a question we often ask, right? How did we go from Yassa, yeah, to Dong Yassa? And a part of the process is the loss of historical continuity, historical conscience. All right. But then, what would we call African history? If we need to redevelop and reconstruct and re-functionalize African historical continuity, what is it? What is African history? We need to distinguish two levels: the immediate one, the present situation, of the local histories, so dear, deeply lived, in which the African people, segmented by diverse exterior forces, principle of which is colonization, are shriveled up, find themselves trapped, and are vegetating today. This sentence here refers to every nation on the African continent. Yeah, every so-called tribal name that we've been indoctrinated to thinking that we are, every nation in the Caribbean, South and Central America, and every community of us in a majority white nation, wherever we are in the West, or wherever, yeah, in Europe or America. All right, yes, local history so dear and deeply lived, in which African people, segmented by diverse exterior forces, the principle of which is colonization, are shriveled up and find themselves trapped and vegetating today, because those national formations, those countries, those colonial constructs impede our capacity to have historical conscience, historical continuity, and therefore historical conscience. A second level, more general, further off in time and space, and including the totality of our people, comprises the general history of Black Africa, insofar as research permits restoring it today from a purely scientific approach. Each history is thus pinpointed and correctly situated in relation to general historical coordinates. Thus, all the continent's history is re-evaluated according to a new unitary standard suited to revive and to cement on the basis of established fact all the inner elements of the ancient historical mosaic. In other words, we develop our cultural continuity and our cultural conscience through our connectivity and our relationship as African people to each other. And when we can place our unique group identity within the context of an African identity related to other African peoples, that helps us to re-establish cultural continuity. I wonder if everybody understand when me I say. I wonder if the people them are understand when me I say. All right. Last point on the historical factor, then we're going to go on to the psychological factor, then we're done. I'll probably keep it for another 15 minutes. All right. I hope ones are good. If there are, I'll take some. If there are any questions or anything at the end, I'll take them. And should I let people come live? If people want to come live, I'll allow it. So, but you have to let me know. I'm not gonna just throw the link out there. I want if I know that there are some people that want to come live, then I'll throw it out. So do let me know. All right. It becomes obvious that should say the feeling of historical unity and consequently of cultural identity that scientific research is capable of providing at this time of the African cultural consciousness is not only qualitatively superior to all those known up to now, but also plays a protective role of the first order in this world, characterized by the generalization of cultural aggression. What does that mean? That the global African cultural continuity, is superior to our fragmented identitarianisms, colonial identitarianisms, in providing a functional basis, for problem solving and protecting ourselves as an entity in today's world. So the history of Africa is, or let's say the history of the Ashanti within the context of the history of African people, is superior to the history of the Ashanti divorced from the history of African people. The history of Africans in Jamaica, or Africans in America, or Africans in St. Lucia or Haiti, is superior within the context of the history of African people connected to the history of African people than it is separated to just the history of Africans in Jamaica, history of Africans in America, history of Africans in Haiti or St. Lucia individually. Because it connects us to a global national entity through which we can understand the world in which we live, and therefore chart a course, a more well-defined and well-informed course to our future. Thus emerges a direction of commendable research for the reinforcement of cultural identity of the Negro peoples. It is by engaging in this type of investigative activity that our people will discover one day that the Egypto-Nubian civilizations played the same role vis-a-vis African culture as did the Greco-Latin antiquity in regard to Western civilization. And this is where I have an issue with all due respect to my brother Garfield, of the Dagger Squad, right about now, because my brother seems to be expending a lot of energy going at brothers and sisters who are connecting Kemet to the rest of Africa, particularly West Africa. And I don't understand this this preoccupation. At the same time, the bigger issue is the fact that my brother seems to be misrepresenting the trajectory, the argument. So for example, if you're equating Africans tying themselves to the Nile Valley, no, because they tend not to talk about the Nile Valley, they only talk about Kemet. So if you're equating Africans tying themselves to Kemet as the same thing as Africans tying themselves to Israel, you don't understand the African-centered, the Afrocentric argument. You don't understand the idea of cultural center, and what that means. This is not a chosen people argument. So it's not a covenant with God argument. It's not the same thing. Yeah. And so when we equate those two things, we misrepresent the work and the intentionality of people like Baba Sheikh Anta Diop, Baba John Henry Clark, Baba Yusuf Ben Yakanan, Baba Asa Hilliard, yeah, Baba Theophile Benga, Baba Chinwezu, Mama Marimba Ani, yeah, and so on and so on and so on, right? We misrepresent, yeah, and so it's fine to disagree with them, but I'm saying at least consider the argument properly. And when we're equating these two things, it demonstrates that we're not pre in the argument properly. All right. So we've gone from the historical factor, and now we're going to touch on the psychological factor, where he says, continuing with the analysis of the three factors. By the way, for those who are late, the three factors that we're discussing right now in terms of culture and identity are the historical factor, the linguistic factor, and the psychological factor. We're not going in on the linguistic factor today. We're only dealing with the historical factor and the psychological factor. Yeah. And he says, continuing with the analysis of the three factors mentioned at the beginning of our account, we arrive now at the third and last constituent factor of the cultural personality. I'm going in on this because I want people to understand the depths of the research and the philosophy that has gone into the ideas and the ideals that we consider to be African, African-centered, Afrocentric, etc. All right. The psychic factor, recognizable from the outset by everybody if it exists at all. The Greek physician Galen, who lived in the 2nd century AD, reduced the characteristic traits of the black person to two which appeared fundamental to him. One, the inordinate length of his penis, and two, hilarity, strong propensity for laughter. The black person is an hilarious human being with oversized genitalia. Yeah, and this was supposed to be a negative characterization as far as these Greeks were concerned. This is very interesting. All right, that we laugh a lot and we have big penises. Okay, all right. For Galen, these two traits, one physical and one moral, were enough to characterize the generic type of black. Even though Galen regularly visited the library of the Temple of Memphis, where he was the last Greek scholar 6 centuries after Hippocrates to consult Imhotep's annals, the brilliance of Egyptian civilization was about to be forgotten and Rome was dominating the world. Historical discontinuity has an impact upon cultural identity. Yeah. Okay. We are witnessing the birth of the portrayal of the black in Western literature. Notice this is what? 2nd century AD. Yeah. The 2nd century AD. Right. We're already witnessing the birth of the portrayal of black people, African people in Western literature. The caricatured identifications of black, starting from some psychological traits more or less wrongly construed, will be pursued up to our days by authors badly in need of definitions via Count Arthur Joseph Gobineau, the ideological ancestor of the Nazis. For him, all art is a result of the marriage between the vegetative sensibility of the black, an inferior quality, and the Apollonian rationality of the white, a superior quality. All right. So this idea of discarding Africanness and imitating whiteness and white identities and white nation states, yeah, is pretty old. All right. And we're going to give you an example of this right now. Yeah. This is taken from there's a Jim Crow museum in Michigan, yeah, Ferris State University. Very informative because it goes into the laws and the policies and the social formations that govern Jim Crow, as well as the art and the caricatures that were used to degrade and denigrate African people. And one of the caricatures, yeah, we know of, for example, Zip Coon and Pickaninnies, and Samba, yeah, and Mammy, Aunt Jemima, and so on and so forth. But one of the caricatures that's documented by the Jim Crow Museum is the savage caricature. And taken from the museum's website, it says the savage caricature showed Africans as, again, animalistic, crazed, or comical cannibals, often with bones in their oversized lips, drawn from the pseudoscientific early anthropological theories of the late 1800s. The savage presented Africans as primitives who were less evolved than their supposedly superior European counterparts. Listen to what everything that Brother Taz said. And tell me if this something is not the image, the caricature that he was presenting. If I had a pound for every time I had a conversation with a self-hating Negroism mentality African, and they told me that Africans put bones in their noses, why, if you love Africa so much, why don't you have a bone? If I had a pound for every time I came across a self-hating Negro mentality and they told me this, I'd be a rich African in today's world. But where did that caricature come from? These people are literally, yes, promoting the caricatures of Jim Crow white racist America. The same people that developed Samba, Coon, Zip Coon, Mammy, Aunt Jemima, Pickaninny, etc., are the ones who perpetuated this particular caricature of savage Africans. And we today promote the savage African caricature when we want to align ourselves with Western imperialism through absorbing ourselves into European identities. Marcus Garvey said. We're nearly done, kings and queens. Today, in order to better grasp people's cultural identity, a scientific approach to the psychic factor can equal. Sorry, I just want to highlight this a piece more. You know, I'm because I'm just remembering certain conversations that I've had. Yeah, and they always find some act, some trait, something that African people wear that you're gonna look on strangely. Yeah, and bring it come. Yeah, play in lip. These are the two most popular ones. Yeah, the play in lip and the bones in the nose. All right. And what's interesting is that brothers and sisters who bring this to me are often believe that they're aboriginals. Yeah, they're native to the Americas, but they don't seem to know that this was a practice. The play in the lip business. Yeah. Was a practice among indigenous Americans, certain indigenous American cultures. They don't seem to be aware of this fact. Yeah. So the hyper denigration of African people, historically and contemporarily, seems to be a preoccupation with these anything but African individuals. They seem more concerned with denigrating Africa than even valorizing the identity that they claim. This is amazing. Today, in order to better grasp people's cultural identity, a scientific approach to the psychic factor can equally be tried. For this, in the context of a socio-historical approach, one should try to answer the following question: what are the psychological and cultural invariants that political and social revolutions, even the most radical ones, leave intact, not only among the people, but among the very leaders of the revolution? Psychological and cultural invariants are the things that tend not to change. Yeah, that tend not to change with different social formations and evolutions and even revolutions. All right. So this is why we talk about African cultural unity, because there are certain commonalities, and no, a play in the lip is not one of them. And again, we're not disparaging the brothers and sisters who play in the lip. We're just saying that if we're talking about African cultural unity, that is not one of the features that you're going to find that unites African people, continent and diaspora. This is not. Yeah. But concepts, spiritual systems are. Yeah. Systems of social organization are. Systems of economic formation are. Yeah. Shared cosmological concepts are. This is why we teach about these things. Brothers and sisters who are socialist leaning don't understand, yeah, why we need to focus on spirituality and philosophy and African culture so much. Yeah, these are the factors that actually are the psychological and cultural invariants. Yeah, today with the explosion everywhere in the world of these structures inherited from the past, we are witnessing a new moral and spiritual birth among peoples, a new African moral consciousness, a new national temperament are developing before our eyes. And unless the structures resist, and how could they, this phenomenon of spiritual transformation of the people, of the people will become greater. Yeah. So when he said the structure, he's talking about the colonial structures here. Yeah. All right. So we are witnessing the rebirth and the growth, of and the redevelopment, the reconnection of historical continuity, and this is producing the embryonic stages of new social formations, new ontological formations, new axiological formations, the redevelopment of new cosmological formations, and this is producing a spiritual transformation within our people that, if we are allowed to develop it and protect those developments, will result in us becoming a greater people, greater able to protect and develop ourselves. Until now, the cultural traits that we inherited from the past are the very ones that we analyzed in the Unité culturelle de l'Afrique noire. My French is not my language, you know what I mean? What may I say? That's the cultural unity of Black Africa. The book, The Cultural Unity of Black Africa, which is also written by Baba Sheikh Anta Diop. Goodness, gaiety, optimism, social sense, etc. And this brief account shows that there is nothing fixed or permanent about them, but that they change with the conditions. Africa is beginning to experience some strong individualistic consciousness with all of the usual consequences. How can one then explain the feeling of cultural identity throughout this permanent change? What are the cultural invariants, again, that we were talking about earlier? We cannot answer this question in detail here, but we can at least recall that the historical and linguistic factors constitute coordinates, quasi-absolute reference points in relation to the permanent flux of the psychic changes. So that sounds a bit complex and convoluted. What he's saying here, my understanding of what he's saying here, is that to answer the question of what are the cultural invariants, requires in-depth study, research, and explanation. All right. But as guideposts, if we study our history and the languages of our people, we will be given a signpost to the factors in our historical and cultural development that have remained consistent throughout our history. Again, which is why we teach about concepts like Ma'at, Ankh, Kimoyo, Mweya, Nyame, Oludumare, Amenra, Mogai, Ingai, Nokulbuwane, Unkulunkulu, and all these things. We teach about them because they represent the consistent, philosophical framework that informs who we are, what the universe is, and what principles and values are developed from who we are and what we consider the universe to be and how we relate to the universe. We do this because it challenges the hyper-denigration of African people. Yes, it puts a different image in front of us, and the heathen them, who call us heathen, rage when they see this, and they use words like garbage and pseudo and all of these terminologies to describe it, because they actually don't want to engage with the high culture and deep thought, as Baba Jedi Shemshu Dehuti put it, Baba Jacob Carruthers put it, of African people and African cultures. We're nearly there. And the blacks of the diaspora, he's now talking to us, kings and queens. They tell me, say, the Africans on the continent, them no one deal, we don't know. They don't care about you Africans in America and Britain and Jamaica and St. Lucia and Barbados and Trinidad and Dominica and Haiti. Them not care about you. Well, this is Sheikh Anta Diop from Senegal. And the last paragraph in this particular section, chapter of the book, deals with the blacks of the diaspora. He says the linguistic bond is broken. I've underlined it because I'm going to come back to it. But the historic bond remains stronger than ever, perpetuated by memory, just as the cultural heritage of Africa, which is evident in the three Americas, North America, Central America, and South America, which that includes the Caribbean, just as the cultural heritage of Africa, which is evident in the three Americas, attests to the continuity of cultural customs, it has been said, I believe, that the difference between the white American and his English man in any event European ancestor is the Negro laugh, so pleasant inherited from the household of the slave, we say enslaved African, who raised his children. That last part, what he's saying is there, and it's true. In fact, yeah, good book. Yeah, Americanisms. Yeah, sorry, Africanisms in American culture. Yeah, and what he's saying here is that American English, yeah, white American English itself is even influenced by African culture, let alone the dominant cultures of African people in the Americas. I'm holding up this book because there's a chapter in this book on that subject. It says African elements. No, African American English. 1 second. Hold on there. I'll soon come, kings and queens. The African character. No. The African heritage of white America. Yeah, the African heritage of white. So even African linguistic and speech forms, yeah, have impacted white America. Now, the reason why I've underlined, by the way, the book is by Joseph, or edited by Joseph E. Holloway, Africanisms in American Culture. The reason why I've highlighted the linguistic bond is broken is because that's not absolutely true. Yeah, the linguistic bond has been tampered with. Yeah, it's been severed somewhat, but not completely broken. If we analyze speech patterns of Africans in the diaspora, the United States of America, and throughout the Caribbean, the Africanisms will become clear. And I'm not sure the extent to which Baba Sheikh Antoinette would have been aware of that. But Jamaican patois, yeah, Haitian patois, yeah, Ebonics, as it's called in among Africans in America, retains African grammatical structure, yeah, and even semantic shift in terms of how we express and formulate words and sentences. Okay, and so brothers and sisters who are linguists, yeah, will delve into that even deeper. There is a linguist whose name is slipping me at the moment, but it will come back to me in a second. Yeah, it will come back to me in a second. Ernie Smith, yeah. There's a linguist, African from America. Yeah, and if you type in Ernie Smith, Ebonics, you will see a number of good presentations from the brother, the elder, dealing with what he calls black sounds. All right, so that concludes the vibration, kings and queens. Yeah, you know what I'm saying. And so yeah, I hope ones and ones understand why I went into all of that. Right, the question now is, does anybody want to come live? I'm going to check the chat to see if there's any questions. If there is anybody that wants to come live, then let me know, and we'll see. I'm not entertaining any shaggery, yeah. And this is an African conversation, yeah, an African family conversation. So if you are not an African, if you are not somebody who Shakara would consider an African, please feel free to not click the link if and when I share it. Big up Melanated Goddess, Brother Jacob. Big up IC3. Brother Kwame, I think I've been that already. Mr. Untouchable. I'm trying to see if there's any questions. Can't read all of the reread my question. Oh, that's that. So that you're talking to somebody else, they're melanated. But bigging up everybody who's come through still. I hope people appreciate why I've gone through that. So just to explain for those who came late, this is a reaction video to the debate that took place yesterday between Brother Jabari Osaze, who did a very good job, I must say, in the debate, and a brother by the name of Taz. And the subject of the debate was should Black Americans connect themselves to Africa? And so I was struck and saddened, very, very saddened by the extent of the hyper denigration of African people, African cultures, and the hyper denigration of African people in today's world, especially out of the context of what the conditions, the context, that brought about certain conditions. Our brother Taz also referred to Baba Omowale Malcolm X as a weak bitch. Yeah, the brother referred to Omowale Malcolm X as a weak bitch, and I'm gonna confess something to you, kings and queens. Yeah, I'm a Black nationalist, Pan Africanist, and I'm also Kimoyo. Yeah, I'm an African spiritualist, and we venerate our great ancestors, especially those who have sacrificed for us. Yeah, and a man like Omowale Malcolm X, who paid the ultimate price, is worthy of the highest honor. Yeah, the highest honor, and I don't think there is an ancestor. Yeah, I'm so connected, to the energy and the spirit and the story of Omowale Malcolm X. I don't think there is an ancestor who, when he is disrespected, I'm a Garveyite, and I can handle disrespect of Marcus Garvey, but for some reason, when I think of people like Omowale Malcolm X, when he is disrespected, it touches me in a different way. Yeah. And so to hear a man repeatedly refer to Omowale Malcolm X as a weak bitch, I had to pity the brother. Yeah. Seriously, I had to pity the brother. But it did hurt, man. I'm not gonna lie. Yeah. And so all these things are going on in the debate. And so what I've been doing in my reaction is just to explain this idea of Africanness from an African-centered point of view, and the need for historical continuity, what that produces in terms of being able to develop ourselves in terms of nationhood. Now, the reality is that most of the brothers and sisters who are anti-African in terms of their identity are not concerned with nationhood. They're not trying to build no nation. Yeah, it's about absorbing themselves into whatever nation state they are a part of at the moment, wherever that is in the white world, in the Western world. Yeah, that's what they're about. All right, and so. And because of that, they see the African nationhood ideal as taking them away from whatever prestige they associate, with Britain or associate with America or France or whatever. And that is a dichotomy that we're having at the moment. All right. So let's see if there's any questions. Nobody wants to come live with me. That's fine. That is absolutely fine. Let's see if there's any questions. I'm still scrolling. Question from, thank you very much, brother Omowale. You know what I mean? We're trying to be you out here, bro. We're trying to be Omowale Africa out here, Margie. But yeah, once again, I'm gonna say it again. If you're not subscribed to Omowale Africa, subscribe to Omowale Africa. You know what I'm saying? You need to do that. Yeah, the brother is doing some fantastic work. Particularly on, and I'm yet to watch these, but he has actually done a couple shows on the recent nonsense that was going on back and forth on Twitter, which I didn't really get involved in, with the Black immigrants versus the Black Americans versus everybody. Yeah, this is just nonsense. But he did do some shows. I'm yet to watch them, but I'm recommending them anyway, because we know, so when it comes from Omowale Africa, at least 99% of it is going to be positive, right, and exact. And I say at least. Also, subscribe to We Charge Colonialism. Yeah, my sister Tiani Cherie and the brothers and sisters of We Charge Colonialism do a beautiful job, of keeping us connected to the African world, continent and diaspora, and the political situations, that are current, that are of current concern to us all, wherever we are in the diaspora. They don't leave anywhere out, So We Charge Colonialism, and there's some beautiful work that they're leading on as well. So I want to encourage you to start to that. I did see some question marks. Hold on a second. Why is it important for Black Americans to associate ourselves with Africa? I think Baba Sheikh Antony has explained that. And I will leave a brother or sister who is considered to be a Black American to go into that deeper. But today I'm more focusing on why there is a need for the hyper denigration of Africa and African people and African culture. Why is it that the brothers and sisters who reject African identity seem to have this preoccupation with demonizing African people, African culture, and African nations as they exist today? If you are an American, if you consider yourself a Caribbean who's not African, or a native person, a Taino or a Carib, there should be no need, to consistently and constantly vilify African people and African cultures. It just so happens that the people that tend to have that inclination tend to do so. But I think I've answered that question with everything that I've said. Historical continuity, and as a social force in being able to develop, build institutions, and so on and so forth. All right. So I hope ones and ones understand that. So because we all came out of Africa, we must attribute all things to Africa. If so, which part of Africa? Because we came out of Africa, we must attribute all things to Africa. No, we attribute our history and our culture to African people. So African is not confined to just the continent of Africa. What is African is the cultures of African people considered collectively. Because we understand that there are commonalities and consistent, what Baba Sheikh Antediop refers to as invariants. But the connecting things to Africa is only a problem for people that are anti-African. So it's not a problem for any African who's proud of their Africanness. If you are in the mentality of self-hatred, then yes, calling things African is going to be a problem for you. So yeah, I get that. I got brothers and sisters on here from the Caribbean. Where in the Caribbean are you, Keter? Are there any other questions? And is there anybody that wants to come live? I thought I saw more questions. No, I didn't. Yeah, so if that is it, I'm gonna log off. I'm gonna hug up my woman. So yeah, once again, big up to Brother Jabari. I do hope you watch this and appreciate this reaction and where I try to go with it. Again, to emphasize the point. So the brother Taz, at one point of the debate, and this is repeating for those who came late. One point of the debate said there is no African culture. No such thing as African culture, but then proceeded to define rape, molestation of women, and female genital mutilation as African culture. This is an African culture, he says. And so I wanted to interrogate that point, and in the context of, well, when do we begin to talk about African culture in the positive? There's no African culture. But when you want to hyper-denigrate, then there becomes African culture. And so that puts into context why it is that we speak of the cultural unity of Black Africa, that we seek to restore our cultural unity, because we understand that when we restore that cultural unity, we become a global people with a global power base. That we're not just separated via the colonial constructs that that have been imposed upon us. And through that cultural unity, we have the foundation for developing political and economic power. And brothers and sisters who are anti-African understand this also, because they know, as America knows, as Britain knows, as France knows, that a properly constituted, politically informed, and intentioned African identity has the wherewithal to destroy global Western hegemony in today's world. And so Africans, Black people who are allegiant to Britain and are allegiant to America, have this visceral reaction when they hear African unity and African culture, because they knows what that spells for the people that they are allegiant to. They're allegiant to the colonizer, and they know that African cultural unity is going to destroy the colonial institution that they have married themselves and wedded themselves to. And we don't speak with any apology, because we not beg no friend. Can you define culture? What you mean by that, please? That's gonna take me somewhere else. But because I'm a lover, no, I'm gonna do it. Because I'm a lover, no. I'm gonna do it. All right. I'm not gonna spend too much time on it, but I have a presentation on this platform too. Actually, one is called Revolutionary Pan African Culture and Economics in Action, and another is called Kimoyo, the Kimoyo series. Yeah, why I choose African spirituality, both of which delve into the issue of culture. But let us see if we can get back into this now, and I'll do a brief explanation here. All right. Okay. Right. Yaso, we're there. Okay, so this is taken from the Kimoyo Why I Choose African Spirituality Vibration. All right, so let me get to the point where I need to get to. Um, all right, so this is me just dealing with my foundation, the Al-Qaeda Revivalist Movement. That's my father, by the way, who you saw speaking at the beginning of this video. All right, so what is culture? Yeah. Sorry, Kings and Queens, my computer's deciding to move slow. Okay. All right. So Wade Nobles defines culture as a process which gives a people a general design for living and patterns for interpreting their reality. Its aspects, he says, are ideology, ethos, and worldview. And a couple presentations ago, when I was dealing with African spirituality, just a couple videos ago, yeah, and last week, you will see me go in and talk about worldview, yeah. Ideology, ethos, and worldview. Its factors are ontology, cosmology, and axiology, and its manifestations, the things that it produces, consist of behavior, values, and attitudes, yeah. And I would add institutions to that, but I guess institutions relates to the concept of behavior. Okay, and so we go into this a little bit more definition. Ontology is the branch of metaphysics dealing with the nature of being, the set of concepts and categories in a subject area or domain that shows that properties and that shows their properties and the relations between them. Okay. All right. So essentially, what we're dealing with here is our understanding of ourselves, the self. Yeah. What is the self? Yeah. In particular, as human beings. All right. Cosmology, the science of the origin and development of the universe, yeah, the cosmos. Modern cosmology is dominated by the Big Bang theory, which brings together observational astronomy with particle physics. All right, so this is our understanding of the universe, and then mixed with ontology, we get the understanding of the universe and our place in it, and this produces an axiology, which is the study of the nature of value and valuation. Yeah. So our cosmology and our ontology creates an ideals and values. Yeah. Valuation of the kinds of things that are valuable. All right. One of the central questions in axiology is this: what elements can contribute to the intrinsic value of a state of affairs? Yeah. And so that the answer to that question is going to be dependent upon your cosmology and your ontology, and this informs and is reinforced by culture. All right, and so we have here a number of attributes, yeah, things that culture does to serve people, which I'm not going to go into today. All right, watch the full Kimoyo series if you want to go into that. I'm not going to go into this, but I'm going to touch on this element. All right, so we have by the way, in the Al-Qaeda Revivalist movement, we define culture as the collective personality of a people manifested in their natural and complete way of life. And there are two major aspects of culture: the cultural values, which are the essential principles of a people's culture. In other words, the things that people value the most, axiology, and which are expressed through cultural mediums. And then you have cultural mediums. These are the mediums through which culture is expressed. So that's language, names, food, garments, ceremonies, rituals, customs, and tradition, families, social structures, music, dance, art, craft, architecture, sports, games, recreation, agriculture, etc., etc., etc. And these contribute to the institutions, yeah, the institutionalized communal value system of a people, yeah, which creates social order, yeah, economic and political order, and so on and so forth, yeah. And so culture is expressed or manifested through 9 areas of people activity, yeah, education, economics, entertainment, labor, law, politics, religion, sex, war, and counter war. So the culture informs these areas of people activity, and in turn, these areas of people activity reinforce, reinvigorate, and evolve the culture through the process of what Baba Kimbo and then the Kiebun Sekifukia calls dingo dingo. The natural order of process and change. I hope that answers your question, my brother or my sister. Africa also allowed in the Bible, my brother. So I don't know. So Africans, it just so happens that Africans have had a long history, and some of that history has been dealing with oppression and degradation and so on and so forth. All right. Black Anglo-Saxons are fighting back. Okay, give thanks. I'm going to, no problems, Ibo. I'm going to lock off the thing. All right, I'm going to lock off the thing unless I see another question. Thank you very much, brother Omawale. Your endorsement is greatly received. Very, very greatly received. That's a brilliant black man right there, So I want y'all for this tune in to the region I deal with. Because Omawale is a brilliant black brother. And he's also a student of Mambo Ama Mazama, who I read from near the beginning of the show. All right. I don't want to keep this too long, I've been going for like 2 hours now. So we're done. All right, kings and queens, we're done. So big up all the people that came through. We love you, and we do this because we love African people, and we understand the power of African spirituality, culture, and identity, to African people. We look throughout our history, we will see that the oppressor has done his best, her best, to sever us from that historical continuity, to sever us and attack our African identity, to indoctrinate us into, to assimilate us into his cultural matrix, beginning with his identity. I hope that we have demonstrated the fact that when we take on the identity of the oppressor, we also take on their political and economic interests. And so we will sanction, military invasion and aggression against other African people, other black people, because we are allegiant to the colonizer. We will promote hyper denigration of African peoples and cultures because we are allegiant to the caricatures created by the colonizer. And so when Africans begin to challenge, this reality, when Africans get a sense of self, when Africans are pursuing unity, and as Baba Molefiketi Asante and Mambo Ama say, consciousness, is a prerequisite of unity, or precedes unity. So when we begin to promote that politically intentioned unification of our people, we know that the colonizer, the oppressor, the Mozungu, the Bakra, is going to come after us. We know that. But we also know that our own brothers and sisters, who have the mind, of the colonizer, the Mozungu, the Bakra, will also come after us in defense of the Mozungu, the colonizer, the Bakra, his ideologies, his nations, his identities, his political, economic, and cultural interests. And so what we will do is we will continue to teach African political, economic, cultural, and African political, economic, cultural, and spiritual philosophy, understanding that when we put African culture, in the beautiful and positive light, through which it was birthed, when we expose our people to the high culture and deep thought of our African ancestors and our African-centered scholars in today's world, that we are shattering the caricatures of the colonizer. Yeah, we are shattering the hypervalorization of European culture that is within the minds of too many African peoples. We are restoring dignity and pride to ourselves as a people, and most importantly, we are restoring functionality to our culture, to our philosophies, to our ideals, to our ontology, our cosmology, and our axiology. And the restoration of that functionality will enable us to wage the necessary revolution, yes, that we need in order to restore our people to our traditional greatness, kings and queens. As I did the other day, I'm going to leave you with the voice of Mama Ella Ando, yeah, the proud voice of Mama Ella Ando, as we affirm our Africanness. I thank you all for listening. I want to send a shout out to Brother Sarnetta and Brother Jabari once again. And appreciate you all once again for coming through. Do stay tuned. Next month, I have the African spirituality, Pan-African spirituality in the Caribbean presentation coming. All right, I'm preparing that at the moment. So do stay tuned in. Catch the preview that I've already done on this channel if you want to. Tendai Mwari, be thankful unto the Mother, Father, Creator of the universe. Kudzai Mudzimu Mukuru, give praises unto our great ancestors. Mojuba, Mojuba Oludumare, Mojuba Orisha, Mojuba Egungun. We honor the creative life force of the universe. We honor the forces of nature, the forces and principles of nature. We honor our ancestors. Onyankopon Asasea Nananom, Nyankopon Asasea Nananom Shraye, Shraye, Shraye. We call on the creator of the universe, Mother Earth, and our great ancestors to continue to bless us all. Shraye, Shraye means bless us all. Yeah, shower blessings upon us all. Ashe, Ashe, Ashe.
Say my name, say my name, I'm an African. Say your name, say your name, say your name, we Africans. Do you have the information or a simple explanation? Tell me who gave who the authority so to change my name, my identity, to replace the brave of fair queens of life to the lies of misery and strife. You with your pale mind, you with your weak heart, no respect for human blood sacrifice or ancestors fed to the plantation. Say my name, say, I'm an African. Say your name. We Africans for survival. We lead a revival. For survival, we lead a revival. Down it down. Do you know what strength and courage brought me through the middle passage? Still I strive with pride and dignity as I fight to cling to my ancestry. country. With these hands of steel forged in Africa and the blood of all the Yoruba. You who came dancing from my womb, now you lay silent as a tomb. It is time to wake from your life of death, time to regain all your lost respect. Say my name, I'm an African. Say your name. We Africans for survival. We need a revival. For survival, we need a revival. Say my name. Say my name. Say my name. I'm an African. Say your name. Say your name. Say your name. We Africans. Nobody else. Be as I walk this global domain, within single blood in my veins, I shall call the children of Makeda to protect the name of our forefathers. We must never bow our proud heads again, but must stand firm in the face of pain. I am the mother and the flame. I am the keeper of your faith to a place of greatness in history. It is I who named you after me. Say my name. I'm an African. Say your name. We Africans for survival. We need a revival. Say it like you mean it. For survival, we need a revival. In the land of all the pharaohs, like the secret of our heroes, if you search, you'll find your true history and the names of all those who fathered me. Writings on the walls cannot be denied. Rights for freedom, spreading far and wide. Out of this land came gods and kings, spreading their power on the wings of the might and glory of Africa. Now I hear them calling from afar. Say my name, say it, say it, say it. I'm an African. Say your name. Say. We Africans for survival. We need a revival. Say for survival. We need a revival. We need a revival. We need a revival. We need a revival. All the great queens of Africa. We need a revival. For Queen Candace. Hey, we need a revival. I know it, you know it, I know it, you know it. We need a revival. We need a revival. We need a revival. We need a revival for the dying children of Africa. We need a revival. We need a revival. We need a revival. We need a revival for all the women who don't know. We need a revival. We need a revival for the young princes of Africa who died. Lord, we need a revival. We need a revival. We need a revival. I know it, you know it, you don't want to own it. We need a revival. 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 We need a revival.